We're going over two very powerful Final Fantasy 15 characters today in the form of King Regis, an incredibly strong support, as well as Ardyn, who's actually the really good damage dealer. But do you need them, and are they going to hold up? So we're going to go through all of the details today for these two characters, Regis and Ardyn in Final Fantasy Brave Exvius. We're going to start with Ardyn actually. Ardyn actually does quite a bit of damage here in Final Fantasy Brave Exvius. If you like the character, you can definitely go for him. He's going to be strong, but he's going to last you that entire amount of time. Let's get into it here for you. So let's start with this TMR first, is Ardyn's hat. It's a hat, 40 attack, 20%. Dark resist, and then the effect of Composed Chancellor, which gives you a strong auto heal of 1800 HP per turn, which is pretty cool. 10% MP recovery per turn and 2 limit burst gauge crystals. So this is actually a pretty strong hat for a lot of what it does here. If you're looking for MP recovery and limit burst gauge crystals per turn, this could be something that you're using. It's never going to be best in slot as far as doing or giving you the most attack or giving you, killers for your physical DPS or anything of that nature, but it does, have 40 attack on it, which is still very strong. And if you're looking for the MP recovery and limit burst gauge crystals per turn, you could lose a couple of points of attack in your head slot there for that extra utility. So it is a very strong TMR in that sense, something you guys might want to think about if you either get Ardyn down the road because he's going to be here for forever, or if you are pulling for Ardyn for that TMR. His super TMR is Undying Vengeance, 20% HP, 60% attack, and then immunity to all status ailments. So this is also pretty good in the way that it gives you a lot of attack, 60% attack. It gives you resistance to all status ailments, 100% as well as a little bit of bulk with 20% HP. This is going to be dependent on how good it is, dependent on what damage dealer you're using. A lot of damage dealers out there are naturally immune to like all the really detrimental status ailments, right? They're already immune to stone and petrification, which is stone, and then paralyzed and all of those things like that. So if you have a character who's already naturally immune to all the big stuff, you don't really care if you get poisoned or diseased or anything of that nature. But if you're using a damage dealer who isn't immune to any of these things, then the ability for you to equip Undying Vengeance, makes this way better than before for those characters. So it's a touch and go kind of thing. I don't think I'd go like super TR Moogle or anything of that nature. It's not that powerful. I wouldn't go for it at all. There's a lot of ways to cover status elements on different characters nowadays, but it is very, very powerful. You get your hands on it. You'll use it from time to time, and that way there. It is unconditional 60% attack, so it's very strong. It's just the best part of it is the status elements thing. We're getting to the point now where damage dealers kind of a lot of the time are immune to like half of those status ailments, or a large majority of, or even all of them in some instances there. So that's his super TMRs and TMRs. Let's get into his equipment selection, which is very strong. Swords, great swords, katanas, as well as daggers and spears and throwing weapons, as well as guns. He also has staves and rods. For some reason, won't really use those on this character. Armor selection: clothing, light armor, hats, shields, which you won't use, and robes, which you probably won't use either. I guess there is some stuff out there that you guys might have that would be good for you in the robes category, with some of the weird ones out there like A-Fry and TMR there. Now let's get into his skills here. We'll go over the ones that he's going to use most of the time. I want to talk about Red Armiger here. It is a Stardust Ray, which is main damage dealing chaining frame family. It starts at a 10 times mod, but it gets a damage increase every time you use it, up to a 32.5 times multiplier as well. So very strong there. It also gives you a multiplier buff for some of his other stacking consecutive increased skills as well, like Shasha Blade and Warp Strike Pain, which is actually going to be his biggest damage dealing skill. I do believe Warp Strike Pain is what you're really going to go for here, which is pretty much the same thing as Red Armiger here. Now, Warp Strike Pain is also, and as well as Shasha Blade, a consecutive damage dealing skill, which is really weird when you think about it, because you're never going to use Red Armiger to buff up Warp Strike Pain, because there's only 3 ways in FFBE that these consecutive damage increase effects reset. One is if you use a normal attack, one is if you die, and then the third way is if you use a different consecutive damage dealing increasing skill. So this means if you go to Red Armiger to buff up your Warp Strike Pain, then when you go to Warp Strike Pain again, it's going to reset your stacks on Warp Strike Pain as soon as you use Red Armor, and you got to start back over again. So there's no like buffing Warp Strike Pain up to this 32.5 times multiplier using Red Armor to get like a 35 times multiplier Warp Strike Pain, because as soon as you Red Armor, you're going to reset that. So you pick one or the other. They both max out at a 32.5 times multiplier here. Warp Strike Pain is going to be better though in the long run, and we'll get to that in a minute there. So we also have stuff like Dark Tornado, Ifrit Faraga as well, which do 80% either fire or dark imperil of your choice there. We have Cerber Zero, Stardust Ray, skill that you're not really going to use there. We have Element Faraga, Element Thundaga, and Element Blizzaga. Some chaff skills you won't use for status ailments there, with a paralyzed, confusion, all that other stuff. Then we have a demonification, physical and magic. This is going to be a growing attack and defense break, or a growing magic and spirit break. So they work like this: they do a 60% break for 5 turns to one enemy, and then the next turn they put it up to 65%, and then the turn after that turn it goes up to 74%. So he's got an attack and defense break from 60 to 65 to 74, and then as well as a magic spirit break from 60 to 65 to 74. So these are available as dual castable skills in his kit as well, so keep that in mind there. He also has imbues for the 2 different elements here. He has a dark imbue and a fire imbue with Ifrit, Meteor Strike, and Adagium Pulse. Adagium, that's the thing that he is. He's like the cursed being. I forgot how they pronounce it in Final Fantasy 15. I'm a bad fan. All right, now we get into Shasha Blade, which is another one of his damage dealing or stacking increasing skills. It is actually pretty interesting. It's a physical damage combo. All right, 3 to 6 times here, 4.5 each, 20.25 average. So it's like a barrage skill. You won't really use the skill all that much. It works just like Armiger Wakes Plus or Awakened Armiger from Noctis there. Same 6 hits there, and goes 3 to 6 times. Awakened Armiger Plus, I think is what it's called, hits like 6 to 8 times. This is 3 to 6, which is a worse version of that. You can give this a multiplier increase though with Red Armiger if you want to. So you can get a 2.5 multiplier increase there. So this would be, instead of 4.5, this would be a solid 7.0 multiplier there. Or no, yeah, 7.0 multiplier there that would attack 3 to 6 times. Still not worth it in my opinion, unless you're trying to combo him with like a CG Noctis that's using Awakened Armiger Plus there. Outside of that, you won't use that skill. He does get dual cast here for all these highlighted skills at level 100 in his 6-star form, and we get to a 7-star form here with his main damage dealing skill, Warp Strike Pain. This is the same thing as we talked about before, 10 times multiplier Stardust Ray, then the consecutive damage increase stacks up to 5 times a 4.5 multiplier increase each time to a 32.5 multiplier. So at this point, it's the same sort of thing as we talked about in his 6-star form. So he does go up to a 32.5 multiplier. Pretty strong there, high mods. We also get Spectral Charge, which is what makes this skill better than his previous 6-star skill, because you can get an additional 7.5 times multiplier increase to Warp Strike Pain, which means it'll go up to a 40.0 multiplier. So that's really, really, really huge for him. And that's where this becomes his best damage dealing skill, Warp Strike Pain. Stardust Ray, chaining skill, 40 times mod. Very good there. We have Overkill, Flames of Rage, and Mastering the Darkness for his 7-star cooldown skills. Overkill does 99% of his max HP and damage to himself for a 250% attack, defense, magic, and spirit buff for 3 turns, and it also increases his resistance to all elements by 100%. So this skill has a very, very big drawback. When you use it, you're going to have to heal him, obviously. But he does get very tanky and a lot of damage from this skill afterwards, right? All status elements for 1 turn, or not status elements, elemental resists for 1 turn, 100%, and then attack, defense, magic, and spirit for 3 turns as well there. I wish this was a little bit longer, maybe like 2 turns of element resist and like 5 turns of attack, defense, magic, and spirit buff, but what are you going to do? It is there. You're going to want to use this skill if you want those big, big buffs. You're going to have to heal him up afterwards. Flames of Rage, 5-turn cooldown available on turn 1, increases attack, defense, magic, and spirit of your entire party by 150%, as well as decreases the elemental resistances to fire and dark by different element resists. Your fire is 100% in peril, and dark is 120% in peril for 3 turns, all enemies. So a very, very big dark in peril there, and a sizable fire one as well. 100% is nothing to scoff at. It is very, very top tier still, but 120 makes dark his main damage dealing thing. He can imbue dark as well, so that's good to go for him there. And because you can dual cast these skills, you can Flames of Rage and you can Dark Imperil on the same, or Dark Imbue, excuse me, on the same turn if you're not using a dark weapon. Mastering the Darkness is his final cooldown skill, 5-turn cooldown, available on turn 1. Increases fire and dark resist by 100% for 3 turns to all allies, and it also gives you access to 2 new skills, Rising Phantom Magic and Rising Phantom Physical, which we will go over. His passives, you've guessed it, he's a true dual wield character, so he's got native dual wield, he's got 50% true dual passive at level 1, then he's getting various attack, HP, and MP passives, MP recovery passives. He auto casts a skill called Shadow Step that we'll get to. He has some counter skills, because what unit in the game doesn't have counters nowadays? He gets a percentage attack of 50% when equipped with a greatsword, so you're gonna have one of those on him. He gets another 50% true dual wield, so that's 100% before we even get to his 7-star passives. He also gets, once you get to his 7-star passives with his trust ability, the all-important additional 50% true dual wield. So he's got base 150% true dual wield as long as you have either his Trust Master or his Super TMR on, so that's very, very powerful. And he does get dual blade mastery, so he gets the 6 times multiplier cap when dual wielding. He gets various other defense plus 20%, attack plus 50% passives. And he also gets a Warp Strike Pain 2.0 multiplier increase. So that's going to bump that up to a maximum of a 42 times multiplier. So very strong there. Now, its conditional skills here, Shadow Step. This gives him 2 stacks of Mirage for 99,999 turns. Now, remember, this auto cast at the start of the battle, so that's going to be very powerful for you there for having him live through some AoE physical attacks. His counter is a 75 flat MP recovery, and then we'll get to the Rising Phantom skills. So the Rising Phantom skills are going to seem very, very, very similar to the other skills that he gets at levels 1, or not level 1, but like level 5-star, 6-star. They're going to be increasing breaks again. So the attack defense break 65%, 70%, 74%, and then the magic spirit break of 65%, 70%, 74%. So he does have the part-time role of a breaker. He just will ramp up over time. You're not getting 70% breaks out of him on turn 1, but you can get like 65, 70, 74%. And these unlock skills, as in addition to breaking the enemy by attack and defense, will also give you a 200% 5-turn buff for attack and defense. So you'll be using these skills, like if the enemy goes immune, you'll have access to these. They're not like game breaking, but they are very, very strong to have access to, and you can dual cast them. So you can go ahead and unlock these on turn 1 if you want to use Ardyn as more of a supportive thing. Maybe you have like the Imbues and Imperils ready for him to go, and you go ahead and on turn 2 you use these skills and then start stacking up your stuff. His Limit Burst also is pretty strong here. It's 100% fire and dark imperil with a 18 times multiplier with ignore 50% defense. That is AoE, so it's 36 times mod. Nothing like super crazy, but you can put that in there if you do want to as well. Now, how strong is Ardyn going to be overall? He does hit very, very high multipliers. Very, very strong multipliers once you build up his stacks of Warp Strike Pain. The thing is, as you may have noticed, he doesn't have triple cast. So while his multipliers are very, very high, like 40, 42 times once you get him all the way up there with a special charge ready to go and his passive ready to go, giving him a total of a 9.5 multiplier increase to the 32.5 base once you've cast that skill 5 times, he's not triple casting anything. So someone that is able to triple cast a 30 times mod is actually going to be stronger than Ardyn just dual casting 2 40 times mods in the future. On top of that, the stacking skills, while fine, the side drawback of that is that if he dies, you're starting all over again, so you're going to be hampering your damage over and over and over and over and over. That's a drawback for every character. If you're dead, you don't do damage, but for him, if you're having struggles in certain fights, that's going to be even a bigger detriment to you, because you're not only going to be losing the different buffs on your character, you're gonna be losing the stacks itself, and there's nothing you can do outside of just start to come back and start casting your skills, starting from a 10 times multiplier all over again. And 10 times multiplier is less than half the multipliers that we're having on a lot of different true dual wield characters nowadays. He does have some side utility, but he's not like a master. He's not like, you know, Locke or Riku from 10-2 in the future, where he can then just go ahead and be like, I'm going to 80% break right now because I feel like it. He's got to take some time off, unlock the skills, then start breaking. The breaks start off weak, and then they work their way on up. So Ardyn, if you're a fan of him, he is very good, but I do believe that he's going to not really like fall off or anything. There's just going to be better characters. There's no real reason to pull for him as a damage dealer. Now, the next character we're going to be talking about, though, is actually Regis, and Regis is an insanely strong supportive character out there for some of you guys who are playing FFBE. So let's go over his TMR here, the King of Lucius character. King of Lucius's character, because King of Lucius' character is a little weird. He's that guy in the fight. He does some things. It's a pretty decent TMR. So 20% HP and 40% attack, and auto cast King of Lucius's character at the start of the battle. So this is a way to give you a little bit of bulk to your damage dealer there. It's not going to be anything best on slot, but what it does do, gives you that 20% HP, still gives you the 40% attack. And then the King of Lucius's character that auto cast at the start of the fight is an 80% defense, 80% spirit buff. So this is going to help your damage dealers, if you're having trouble with them, live through different preemptive attacks, because you're going to start the fight with some defense and some extra defense and spirit, and then the 20% HP from the passive as well. So very strong TMR in that sense. If you having problems beating certain fights that have preemptive attacks, that might be something, if you have access to, you look into. Now his super TMR is the Sword of the Father. It's a one-handed sword with 20% MP and the effect of High Tide for 100% LP gauge fill rate. This, honestly, I don't even know why this is a super TMR. I mean, it's okay. 163 attack, 20% MP, 100% High Tide. I mean, if you want High Tide, just go get a dagger, just any dagger, and go run it through Item World. Saves you from pulling 4 Regis, I guess. So, I mean, I think it's a pretty low quality super TMR. If you have it, great. If you don't, great. You know, so there we go. His equipment selection: dagger, swords, great swords, katanas, spears, guns, and throwing weapons. Armor selection: great shields, large shields, small shields, hats, clothing, light armor. Now we're going to talk about what he does that is very strong. So if you're just starting out in FFBE, Regis can be very, 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 very powerful for you, because he's going to have a lot of the things that you're going to need for a support character. So let's get in here. He has an AoE Dispel on a Razor Blow that can come in handy. He has the ability to spam out some HP barriers. We have Sheltering Well here, 100 or 1,000 or 2,000, excuse me, 2,500 HP barrier, as well as making you immune to attack, defense, magic, and spirit break. So he's got that covered. He's got 30% general damage mitigation on a non-cooldown skill that also gives an HP barrier. He's got an attack and magic buff of 130% that heals 5,000 or 1,500 HP over 5 turns. He's got a defense and spirit buff of 130% that heals 150 MP over 5 turns. He has the ability to increase your resistance to just defense and spirit break by 100% for 5 turns, while giving you a magic damage mitigation of 20%. He can make you immune to stop by 100% for 5 turns, while giving you 20% physical damage mitigation. So he's got a lot of these skills that kind of do 2 things at one time, and these skills are very, very powerful things if you don't have access to them yet. He has Bonds of Battle, which gives you an attack and magic buff of 130% for 5 turns to all allies, and enables the Light Glaive ability for your entire party for 5 turns, and we'll get to that. And that is another one of the niche things that you can also do with him that is very powerful when it comes to FFBE. He has Majestic Wall, HP barrier 2,000, as well as doing a little bit of damage here, so he can be a supportive Stardust Ray Chainer. The damage on his skill really isn't that big of a deal. It's more of the fact that he can Stardust Ray Chain with someone else for different fights where maybe you can't use duplicate units, maybe you don't have another unit, maybe using a party where you want to use some sort of chain finisher to chain finish a limit burst or chain finish some one-hit skill in your party. He has that capability for you as well. He does have dual cast here, learned at 6-star, and then at 7-star we have Claris's support here, 5-turn cooldown available on turn 1. Gives everyone a 200% attack, defense, magic, and spirit buff for 3 turns, and then gives everyone the ability to use a skill called Lucian Glaive for 1 use. Not for 1 turn, for 1 use, so you can hold on to it, and we'll get to that skill as well. We have Ring of Lucii Regis here, which is another Stardust Ray skill, and this is another thing that he can do. This skill not only does Stardust Ray chaining frames, so we talked about that before with supportive chaining, but it also puts up a 40% mitigation to general damage on your party for 1 turn. So if you're just using the skill with one of his other skills to do some supportive Stardust Ray chaining, what have you, you can do that while maintaining your 40% damage mitigation, or you can just throw it out there every turn as half of his skill to mitigate damage as well. But he has even larger general damage mitigation than this ability here. We have the King of Lucius's Innervation, 4-turn cooldown available on turn 1. He does have some supportive healing here, so this skill is going to give you 50% of your max HP and MP back to your entire party, as well as give everyone 15 limit burst gauge crystals. The limit burst gauge crystals thing, you guys know how strong that can be. That's sort of a party thing. How abusive that can be is dependent on who you have in your team, right? Maybe you have Regis and then you have Lyn Fina as your breaker and then Regis as your buffer, right? You can go ahead and use both those skills, and then you have maybe CG Charlotte as your as your tank, and she now can just use her limit burst. So you go ahead and fire both their LB gauge crystal filling skills off on turn 1 or whenever you want, and just instantly fill, you know, 29, 30 limit burst gauge crystals to your entire party. Something of that nature. You really got to think outside of the box for that. Not a little bit, but it can be very, very, very powerful, the flat limit burst crystal fill. He has Power of Kings as well, 6-turn cooldown available on turn 1. This is also something that's pretty cool that he can do. He has the ability to give both physical and magical killer to demons, humans, fairies, and undeads for 4 turns to your entire party by 75%. So demons and humans and undead, those are relatively common, especially demons and humans. So having just your general support, if this is who you're using, you're gonna run into a lot of fights where you're just gonna be like, yep, I'm gonna use this skill, and that's a sizable amount of killer for you there. Just how easy it is. It's just like a side thing in his kit. That's why I like it so much. There's some other characters where it's like their whole shtick is to give you like 30% killer to one enemy type at a time or whatever. He does 4 types at a time, throws them all up there to your entire party as like half of the thing he's doing in the turn, and it lasts 4 turns. So very powerful there. His passives aren't anything crazy to talk about. They're just like defense, spirit, HP, MP passives. He's immune to stop. He's got light resistance, spirit passives. His TMR, his Trust Master ability, is actually pretty strong here. He does get triple ability at the start of the battle, so you're going to want to have access to that. It also gives him a very, very sizable 60% defense and spirit passive buff, and then also makes him immune to charm. So he's going to be very, very tanky, and he's going to get triple ability as well. So keep that in mind. On turn 1, he's going to have access to that. HP and MP 30%, and auto cast King of Lucius's Power physical to start of the battle, and then 20% MP is his level 115 passive. He doesn't actually have a 120 passive right now. So let's go over his conditional skill. So King of Lucius's Power magic is 20% magic damage mitigation to yourself there. Light Glaive is this ability that he gives access to your entire party. All right, so Light Glaive, physical damage 0.5 multiplier to one enemy. Now keep this in mind. This is very, very similar to something that, you know, Summer, Lid, and Fina can do, where they give off Light Glaive. So everyone in your party will get Light Glaive. If you're using some sort of party where you're going to use a chain finisher, chain finishing Limit Burst, chain finishing Dragoon, chain finishing anything, or someone like CG Noctis he works very well with, you can make anyone in your party chain with anyone in your party. So he's going to be one of those supports that's going to open up all these different party compositions for you. If that's something that you want access to and don't have access to yet, he's going to be your ticket into doing that. So he's going to be just up there with characters like a Lid and Fina, Summer, Lid, and Fina, and as well as, you know, Sylvie, who can give different characters the ability to chain with each other. He also has triple ability, which will allow him to triple cast on turn 1. Lucian Glaive is another ability. This is that skill that he grants access to your entire party to use one time. It's the same thing as Light Glaive. So a roll array, chaining skill. But this one, instead of just doing supportive chaining, when you use it, when that character does use a skill, they're going to heal their MP pool by 200. So it's pretty cool. He like gives you the blessing of Lucius, and then you can do some supportive chaining, and it's going to fill that character's MP by 200. It's not going to fill Regis' MP by 200. It's going to fill whoever uses it by 200. So not only does he have the supportive chaining thing done, he's also a pretty nice MP battery as well, because he got the MP refresh. He's got Lucian Glaive to give to somebody. So that's pretty cool there. And then King of Lucius's Power gives him 20% physical mitigation as well. So he's going to have all this extra tankiness from just being a person. He's going to be a very, very, very sticky character. Now, his limit burst is also very, very powerful here. And if you're missing the big 50% general mitigation in your party, he's going to be your ticket to that. 30 limit burst crystals, 30 limit burst crystals is a cost here. It's going to do a 21 times physical multiplier. Don't really care about that. It's going to give a 3000 HP barrier, and it's going to apply your entire party a 50% general damage mitigation for 3 turns as well. So he does have a lot of the cool stuff that you're going to need. He's got the Attachments, Magic, and Spirit buffs. He's got the mitigations. He's got general mitigation, physical mitigation, magic mitigation. He's got MP recovery. He's got a little bit of emergency healing. He's got the ability to go ahead and give MP recovery through his ability to let people chain with each other. So if that's something that's important to you as well, go for it there. He's not like a broken unit, but if you're just starting off FFBE and you don't have any support whatsoever, he'd go really well with pretty much any breaker in the game. That's the only thing he doesn't really do. He doesn't do elemental resistances and he doesn't do breaks. But outside of that, as far as supportive stuff, he covers pretty much everything else. So if you get a healer, this guy, the big old King Regis, and then like a breaker, you're gonna have a pretty well offset team as far as all of the important aspects of FFBE goes. You'll be able to make pretty much whatever team you want with the breaker, the healer, King Regis, a tank, and then 2 damage dealers, yours and then your friends. So he's got a pretty stocked kit. I know a lot of you guys out there already have access to all this stuff, so he doesn't really do anything special. He just does it all. You know, he's like Sylvie, except he does more than Sylvie, but he doesn't do as many things as Sylvie does, right? He doesn't have the crazy emergency breaks or the elemental resistances or whatever, but he's got the mitigation part as well. So pretty cool character here in the form of Regis. If you want to have access to a character like that, I suggest you go for it. Like I said, I want to reiterate, if you already have supportive characters that do the things that we just mentioned, you have that kind of stuff covered, you have the mitigation covered, the buffs covered, the physical magic mitigation covered, then you don't need to go for him. But if you guys out there are looking for that sort of stuff, then you totally should go for him, especially if you're new and you don't have anything. And if you don't have a damage dealer either, Ardyn is not a terrible pickup on the way there, but you're really aiming for Regis as you pull on this banner as a newer player. So that's going to be it today, guys. If you want to see more stuff like this, go ahead, hit that subscription button, leave your comments down below so we can converse in a productive manner. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care, guys.